Ah yes, Madubu Gorge. The name alone probably sends a ripple of tension down the spine of anyone who has played Tomb Raider 3. Somewhere deep in the heart of the South Pacific, past a few ominous temples and a suspicious number of booby traps, lies one of Lara Croft's most challenging outings, both a technical marvel and a test of player patience. Welcome to a breakdown and review of Madubu Gorge, the level that feels less like a casual expedition and more like a platforming fever dream, laced with poorly controlled kayaks and a vendetta against solid footing. So let's dive in. Carefully. The first thing you'll notice about Madubu Gorge is how deceptive it actually is. On the surface, it looks beautiful. Lush tropical scenery, steep cliffs and rivers that wind like veins through the jungle. Core Design clearly flexed their creative muscle here, and from a visual standpoint, it is impressive, especially by 1998 standards. The level feels remote, dangerous, and atmospheric. But the moment you start moving, the mask slips. This level is a platforming gauntlet, and not the satisfying kind. No, Madubu Gorge is more of a make one mistake and fall into a bottomless pit or spike trap kind of deal. The platforming here is punishing, and it doesn't care how careful you are trying to be. Slippery ledges, disappearing handholds, and jumps that almost make sense. But not quite. The level constantly dares you to think you can make a jump, only to watch you plummet in slow motion after a mistimed leap. And then there's the layout. And, in my opinion, this is one thing Madubu Gorge actually does really well. It gives you options. This level has two distinct routes to completion, and that's actually a rarity for Tomb Raider levels, especially in the PS1 era. On one path, you'll tackle more traditional platforming, complete with precise jumps and environmental puzzles. On the other, you're introduced to the Kayak. Well, we'll talk more about the aquatic death trap later, but for now, let's appreciate that Madubu Gorge offers branching paths. It adds replay value and gives you a sense of freedom that otherwise is lacking in the more linear levels of the game. With that said, however, neither route is particularly forgiving. Whichever way you go, you're in for a trial, just a different flavour. Want to climb your way up slippery cliffs, dodging spikes and falling rocks? Or would you rather try your luck with raging currents, spinning blades and a kayak that handles like it's made of wet soap? These are your choices. And in my opinion, that actually brings up a major issue with this level: player flow. I've always found one of Tomb Raider's defining strengths is its methodical pacing. You line up your jumps, you survey your surroundings, and you solve puzzles with care. But Madubu Gorge is impatient, it's twitchy, and constantly pushes you forward, with no real margin for error, which makes you feel more frantic than deliberate adventuring the series is known for. It actually becomes less about mastery here, and more about muscle memory, trial and error, in the most frustrating way. You'll find yourself repeating the same sections multiple times, not because you didn't understand the platforming, but because the inputs are that unforgiving. Even with that said, to give credit where it's due, there is a certain charm in the madness. The tension is real, the sense of scale is undeniable, and if you do manage to pull off a perfect sequence of jumps and climbs, there's this undeniable rush, like you've earned the right to keep on going. That's the core of Tomb Raider's DNA. Danger, satisfaction, and above all, style. But here's the thing, Madubu Gorge pushes that balance to its breaking point, with its infamous kayak sequence. So, the kayak, on paper, this was actually a bold move. I think Core Design just wanted to shake things up, give players something fresh, a change of pace. A river ride through the gorge, it sounds thrilling to me. Well, it definitely could have been. In theory, piloting a kayak through ancient jungle rapids while dodging blades and spikes is a perfect Tomb Raider moment, a seamless blend of action, exploration, and environmental storytelling. But in practice, it was an absolute disaster. The kayak in Madubu Gorge handles like it's being cursed. Steering it feels like trying to parallel park a canoe with oven mitts on. And let's not forget how much it would hurt your thumb pressing down on a directional key to try and get the kayak moving where you'd want it to be. The controls are inverted, momentum behaves like it's governed by an entirely separate set of physics, and, to make matters worse, there's this uncanny input delay between your input and Lara's response, as if the kayak needs a moment to think about whether or not it wants to do as you said. The initial journey in the kayak down the waterfall and into the cave, avoiding circular saw blades embedded in cave walls, spikes popping out of waterfalls and underwater, and the strong currents that shove you into hazards. This section stops feeling like gameplay very quickly and instead feels more like a punishment. I mean, let's break it down. The kayak section relies on a few core mechanics. You use the action button to pivot, you can speed up or slow down, and you're constantly wrestling the current, which rarely flows in your favour. In a vacuum, that might sound manageable, but the real kicker is that the environment is actively trying to kill you every few feet. There are points where spinning blades drop down without warning. Some are partially hidden by the environment. Others activate just as you think you've cleared them, clipping your kayak at the last second and sending Lara flailing to her death. Combine that with tight tunnel spaces and those aforementioned steering issues, and you've got a sequence that demands perfection with tools that simply aren't up to the task. Given all the drawbacks and downsides of the kayak, the irony is the kayak route is technically the easier of the two. The other option requires climbing through platforming hell, is longer and arguably more dangerous. So people do often choose the kayak, hoping to get through it faster, only to spend 20 minutes getting chopped into ribbons and trying to wedge themselves away from rocks. Although there is a choice in this level, no matter which path you take, Madubu Gorge finds a way to challenge you to the extreme. When it comes to traps on this level, Madubu Gorge goes all in. There are the classic spike pits, falling rocks, and flame floors, but the placement is what makes them truly evil. You'll often be navigating tight spaces with limited visibility, and suddenly blades rise up from underwater and Lara's health has disappeared. Some traps are so specific in their timing, it's clear they were designed for the players to fail once or twice before figuring them out. It's old school trial and error, which some players find nostalgic, but in this level, I must say, it does feel a bit excessive. The margin for error is, despite the pun, razor thin, and the checkpoint system is virtually non-existent, unless you are hammering the manual save. It must be said though, despite the bad steering, the ruthless traps, and the sudden deaths, Madubu Gorge never loses its sense of scale. There's a rawness to this level design that's kind of impressive. You feel like you're navigating something ancient, untamed, and wild. The environment isn't just a backdrop in this case, it's actually the enemy. It's just a shame the tools you were given to face it have a mind of their own. By the time you reach the final stretch of Madubu Gorge, you're likely emotionally drained. Possibly a little dead inside, and definitely questioning every decision that led you here. Congratulations though, if you made it this far, you've enjoyed one of the most punishing levels in Tomb Raider 3, outwitting the traps, survived pixel perfect jumps, and somehow managed to wrestle a sentient kayak into submission. The conclusion of this level doesn't come with much fanfare. After all the river rapids, cliff faces, and death blades, the level wraps up relatively quietly. You find your way to a ceremonial area, complete a final environmental puzzle, and transition into the next level, the Temple of Puna. There's no epic boss fight, no cutscene driven reward, the level just seems to stop. And weirdly, that's kind of fitting. See, Madubu Gorge was never about payoff, it was about the journey. If journey here means reckless challenge, it's a gritty, adrenaline-filled rite of passage, and in a way, I think that's the point. Depending on the order you play the regions, Madubu Gorge might come quicker than you would have liked. The flexibility is part of what made Tomb Raider 3 feel bigger than its predecessors. It wasn't linear, and you could choose in which way to play your adventure. But this level, regardless of when you face it, always hit like a wall. It's where the game's difficulty spikes, and where the mechanics show both their strengths and their weaknesses. It's one of those levels that doesn't just challenge the player's reflexes, it tests their endurance. Is that good design? That depends on what you come to Tomb Raider for. If you love the platforming, precision, methodical exploration, and old school trial and error gameplay, this level is memorable in all the right ways. It's challenging, atmospheric, and refuses to hold your hand. However, if you are looking for a smoother, more polished experience, especially by modern standards, this level feels like it's out for blood. The uncontrollable kayak, borderline unfair traps, and tiny platforming margins, it can feel all a bit more frustrating than fun. So, does Madubu Gorge deserve its reputation as one of the hardest and most frustrating levels in classic Tomb Raider history? Absolutely. But it also deserves credit for ambition. It tried to do something different. It blended open design with branching paths, introduced new mechanics, and even if the mechanics didn't always work, the attempt was bold. In the end, Madubu Gorge is a reminder of what Tomb Raider was at its core: raw, relentless, and willing to throw you into the deep end. Next time you find yourself on this level, dodging spikes and screaming at your controller, just remember you're not alone, and we've all been there. And perhaps that is what makes this level great. Thank you so much for watching my video level review of Madubu Gorge. If you did enjoy this video, please do remember to like and leave a comment down below. As always, a massive thanks to my YouTube members, and thank you for watching.